You ever stop and think about the world you're moving through every day? I mean, really think about it. It's built on this completely invisible architecture. It's not made of steel or glass, nope. It's made of meaning, a hidden structure of symbols and stories that literally shapes how you think, what you want, and even who you believe you are. So let's dive in and see how this whole thing actually works. Okay, think about this for a second. Why does wearing a certain pair of sneakers or using a specific phone feel like you're making a statement about yourself? It's definitely not just about the product, right? It's about the story that product tells about you. So how on earth do they manage to do that? Well, this right here is pretty much the secret sauce. Brands are tapping into something the psychologist Carl Jung called archetypes, these universal, ancient symbols that are just baked into our collective unconscious. When Nike aligns itself with the hero archetype, they're not just selling you shoes, they're selling the feeling of triumph, of overcoming the odds. It's a psychological shortcut that goes straight to our deepest desires. And that brings us right to our first section, where we're going to start decoding this incredibly powerful symbolic language. And trust me, it goes way, way beyond just logos and commercials. You know, the philosopher Ernst Cassirer absolutely nailed it with this idea. He said, look, we humans don't actually experience reality directly. We are symbolic animals. We build this whole world of signs and language and art that sits between us and the physical world. So basically, every single thing we experience is filtered through this massive web of symbols. So if our world is built out of symbols, then what are the blueprints? How does it all get put together? Well, let's break down the three core components of this architecture of meaning. First up, you've got the symbol. I want you to think of this as the basic brick. A flag, a cross, a logo, each one is like a little vehicle, carrying a whole history of meaning and emotion along with it. They are the absolute fundamental building blocks of culture. Okay, next you have myth. Now, myths are the blueprints that arrange all those symbolic bricks into a story that makes sense. And we're not talking about fairy tales here. These are the grand narratives that explain everything, where we came from, what we're supposed to be doing, and how we should live. And finally, there's ideology. This is the finished building. An ideology takes those powerful myths and symbols and organizes them into a system that actually structures our society. But here's the really crucial part. It often works by making a very specific set of power dynamics seem totally natural, inevitable, just, common sense. But wait a minute. How can a story, a myth, actually control anything? It sounds so abstract, but the mechanics behind it are surprisingly concrete. Let's break down exactly how this machine works. The French thinker Roland Barthes gave us a really brilliant model for this. He said every myth operates on two levels. First, there's what you literally see, the denotation. But then there's a second, much more powerful level, the connotation. This is the hidden ideological value that gets attached to the first meaning. And this example just illustrates his point perfectly. Barthes analyzed this magazine cover. So, on the first level, it's super simple. A black soldier is saluting the French flag. That's it. But on the second level, that entire image becomes a new sign. It gets used to signify a myth, the myth of a great fair French empire where every citizen, no matter their color, serves loyally. It completely transforms a complex, messy, and contested history of colonialism into one simple, positive image. And that's the ultimate goal of myth, naturalization. It just strips away all the politics, all the history, all the struggle, and it presents one particular worldview as if it were as natural and unquestionable as the sun rising in the morning. The Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci had a name for this: hegemony. See, this isn't rule by force, it's rule by consent. We, the masses, willingly go along with the dominant ideology because our culture, through media, schools, all our institutions, makes it seem like the only possible, logical way for society to be. So this all sounds a little bleak, doesn't it? It's like we're just passively soaking up all these messages. But that is never, ever the whole story. Because wherever there's power, there is always resistance. So let's look at the art of fighting back. So yeah, the big question. Are we just a bunch of puppets dangling from these ideological strings? And the answer is not even close. Resistance is actually woven into the very fabric of power itself. Political scientist James C. Scott explains this with a fantastic idea of two transcripts. You've got the public transcript. That's the show of respect and obedience that the powerless have to put on for the powerful. But then there's the hidden transcript. This is the offstage stuff, the gossip, the jokes, the conversations where people mock and critique the very power they publicly obey. This quiet, everyday resistance is what Scott calls infrapolitics. It's not some big, dramatic revolution. It's more like a war of attrition fought with gossip, or dragging your feet, or using coded language. A really classic example is how African American spirituals during slavery sounded like simple hymns, but were often packed with hidden messages about escape routes and resistance. And today, these same kinds of tactics have evolved into what we now call culture jamming. This is the art of taking the symbols of power and turning them against themselves. Whether it's parodying a corporate ad, physically altering a billboard, or using viral memes to critique politicians, it's all part of this very long tradition of infrapolitics. And this quote just captures the strategy perfectly. Culture jamming works because it hijacks the visibility and power of a big corporate or political symbol and then uses that very same power to send a totally opposite message. It's brilliant. Okay, so let's bring all of this home. Let's look at how this all plays out in the world that you see every single day right on your own screen. If there's one key takeaway, it's this. The architecture of meaning isn't some static, finished thing. It's a dynamic battlefield. On one side, you have dominant ideologies constantly trying to make their worldview seem natural. And on the other, you have people constantly resisting, creating their own counterstories and jamming the signals. I absolutely love this quote from the anthropologist Clifford Geertz. It reminds us that we aren't just trapped in these webs of meaning. We are the spiders. We're the ones spinning them. Culture isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we are actively creating and recreating every single day with our choices, our stories, and our symbols. And that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. As you scroll and share and talk today, what myths are you reinforcing? Which ideologies are you maybe challenging? To put it simply, what webs are you spinning?